Live.
Okay, hello, good evening and welcome everyone. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so welcome to everyone viewing on YouTube. Elected members of the committee unable to join in person are able to join remotely. However, they do not form quorum and will not be able to vote, and their attendance will not be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be minuted in the notes. Non-voting independent members ideally attend in person, but if unable to join the meeting in person, are also able to join remotely. They retain speaking rights. Anyone attending remotely must put their camera on when addressing members of the committee. With regard to the meeting etiquette, please may I ask that you indicate you wish to speak by raising your physical hand. People online should raise their virtual hand and we will monitor the screen for virtual hands. Please note that the chat function on Zoom will not be used in this meeting, and questions or comments on the agenda pack should be raised via the chair. Colleagues, as usual, we have a very busy agenda tonight. I'm keen we move at pace and spend adequate time where greater focus is needed. Agenda item 1, apologies for absences and substitutes. Are there any apologies for absence, members?
I've not received any apologies for absence.
Thank you.
Item 2.
Declarations of interest. Okay, to those members who are physically present, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor?
Yeah, the LLDC register on the corporate risk register mentions East London Energy. They are my energy provider, so I think it's worth mentioning that.
Councillor Paul?
So just a small one, reference is made to Colgrave Primary School on the draft report. I'm chair government of Colgrave. I made it last time, but for consistency, I'll make it again.
Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Members are requested to consider and agree the accuracy of the decisions and the minutes of the last meeting of the Audit Committee held on the 7th of February 2024. Are there any matters of accuracy? Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. On page 14, where it just under section 4, where it mentions the recruitment of an independent would be rerun.
Yes.
I'm sure I recall raising concerns about that and asking some questions, and then it being further discussed in a private session.
Yes.
That should be mentioned in the minutes, because I did raise concerns about that decision.
Yes, if the clerk will note
On the actions log, is it?
Yeah, I don't know whether the note that I raised concerns about it needs to be in the actions log, but it should be somewhere in the minutes.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Are the minutes agreed otherwise? Okay. Item 4, actions log. The committee is asked to note the contents of the action log. Since the agenda publication, the responses have been circulated to the following actions. AC 2002, the updated tables 5 and 6 in appendix 1 with finalised figures circulated to the committee. AC 203, that a month history of where investments have been held with the committee. AC 210, that the committee sees the communication plan on how complaints information will be shared with staff. In respect of AC 201, the committee be cited on a 3-year history of contract waivers for each council directorate. The response had been circulated late and the level of data was too much for consideration in time for this meeting. So I'm leaving the action log open for now. In terms of the new round of appointing to the independent member vacancy, I can advise an advertisement has been booked in the April edition of New Voices, and I ask the clerk to add progress updates to the action log. Are there any questions on the action log? Councillor Chadder, please.
On AC 177, the Freedom Pass, I know we're
Yes.
that discussion over, as I presume it's not gone to any scrutiny committee as originally agreed.
Yes, it was sent to Susan Masters for consideration at the scrutiny, and she's going to come back to us as to when it can be accommodated on the work plans.
Fine, thank you.
But I'm waiting for that, so it's left open.
Thank you, clerk. Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Action AC 205 about the cost benefit analysis of the GDPR audit. We've received that information now. Thank you to the clerk for that information. I'm wondering what we can do as an audit committee to further raise alarms about this, because to me the cost benefit analysis says therefore do it, because the benefits are so strong and the cost relatively so low. But we keep saying things to that effect as a committee, and I'm just wondering, we've got the annual council meeting coming up. Is it something that we can put in our report to warn full council that there's these actions that need to be taken in response to the GDPR audit, and similarly in for our technological risk level, that we sort of keep seeing it again and again and again and saying the same things again and again. I think we kind of have a duty to full council to warn them. So,
That can be incorporated in the report.
thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I noticed Glyn, each has his hand up.
Okay, if you wish to come in, councillor Booker as well, sorry. Okay, just quickly, please, because we need to move on to Glenn.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, I recognise I'm not in your line of sight. My hand went up at item 1. Apology from Amit Shankar. He's asked me to attend in his place.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Councillor Booker, please.
Thank you. AC 196, I don't think it's actually clear what's being requested. So I think that we should relook at that request, because I don't think it's clear and it hasn't been actioned either. And that might be, it went to Nick Sharp, evidently. It may be that he didn't understand the request, because I'm reading that and don't understand the request. AC 205, similarly to Nate, I can see that there's cost and benefit. I can't see the analysis, and I would have liked the analysis. I would have liked the decision, what that information meant in terms of a decision, and why it was why they chose that, because the analysis bit isn't there. Thanks.
Okay, we can come back to Nick or Conrad. Did you want to come in on that?
So on 196, the report, yeah, you can see that the action isn't perhaps quite as clear as it could be. Pretty sure, well, I know that what was agreed is that there was the action plan arising from the recommendations of the report, and the agreed action was that internal audit should conduct a follow-up to see whether those recommendations had in fact been implemented or not, with the results of that to be reported back to the committee on or before December 24. In other words, that the audit should be followed up and the committee should receive assurance as to whether or not the agreed actions had not been delivered. And the ordinary timeframe of that would be a year on or within a year of the audit report. So, you know, hence the end date of December 24. It doesn't have to be as late as that. It also could be sooner.
Okay, just very quickly, please, because we need to.
There's nothing to do with it, actually. Do you mind if we get those windows closed? Because I can't really hear.
Yes, it's very noisy.
I don't know.
I don't mind closing them.
If you're able to, if someone is able.
I'll go and sort that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quickie for completeness. I can do it. Re popular in the section on internal audit progress report. The popular report is marked as a final report, no grade, which is I've never seen that before in any of our reports. So you might like to close the circle as we get to the part of the agenda. We need to just restate what are we actually doing with popular, the grade for that.
Yes, okay, fine. Let's move on, please. So to members present, well, councillor.
Oh, no, sorry, councillor Booker still has a hand up.
Okay, councillor Booker, please, very quickly.
Oh,
no, it's an old hand. Okay, thank you. So.
No, you still call it even with.
Members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands of the report noted? Okay, item 5, tenancy audit report. Provided at the request of the committee, report as read. Are there any questions on the report? Okay, councillor. I will read out the recommendations. For reasons set out in the report and its appendices, the committee is recommended to agree 2.21 tenancy audit strategy 2024 to 2027 as at appendix 1, and the audit committee is asked to note 2.21 tenancy audit report March 2024 as at appendix 2. Okay. Take some questions. You, councillor Chadder, you were first. Who is? Sorry, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Tony Lyons. My role in the council is Head of Housing Services, and I've prepared the reports that are with the committee today.
Did you have any comments to tell the committee before questions?
It may come out in some of the questions. There are a couple of amendments that I'd like to make just for clarity.
Okay.
I can either do that now, or I can do it as part of potential questions that come, or
are they major things that it would help the committee in terms of the questions that are asked? If you can quickly tell us what.
Yeah. So The first thing is around the data, which is provided within section 5 of the tenancy audit report. And it's the section that relates to the data.
You just give the page number that is help.
Would be page number 3.
So the page 3, so that is page 29 of the report, are you saying?
And it should be, the information that I'm going to refer to is within section 5, tenancy audit performance.
Under the policy,
Oh, sorry, this is the tenancy audit report dated March 2024.
Appendix 2 on the electronic.
Appendix 2, yeah. Sorry.
All right, yes, page 37 of the papers. Page 37. Okay, carry on, please.
So within that section, the tenancy audit performance, at the bottom there's some data that's referred to.
Yes.
First 2 lines, having made some further inquiries, I believe is a cumulative total of those cases, numbers of properties, and not necessarily a complete total altogether. It's been added on month by month.
Unit of the cumulative total. What date are you starting from?
Sorry, say again.
Starting date. So you're saying from April 2023,
So-
April 2022?
April 23 to March 24.
Okay, during that period. Okay.
During that period, those first 2 lines, I now have a query about the data that's been provided to me.
Yes.
And I want to make it clear to the committee that data may be incorrect. And I'd like to have the opportunity to come back with the actual
Yes, we prefer
data.
to give us accurate data. That would be helpful. Okay, let's go to questions, please. Councillor Chadder, you were first.
think that slightly undermines exactly a lot of the questions on the report. Okay, let's take it stage back. Strategy, can I just ask from a governance point of view, are you accepting comments on it? Because I think some of the strategies are inconsistent with at various points.
We're talking now about the tenancy audit policy document,
You refer to it.
because there's 2 documents. Yeah, so the tenancy audit policy document,
Yeah.
which sets out our strategy 2024 to 2027.
Yes.
Yes. So sorry, can you repeat the question, Sanam?
So what's the mechanism? Is this, it's got draft on our documents?
Yes.
What's the formal mechanism for adopted? And are you accepting comments on this?
So the second question, comments, absolutely. The first question is, I think it's part of the report to this committee to consider comments and remarks about the content of the report before it's formally ratified and brought into.
So sorry, I'm just trying to be clear. What's the mechanism for the ratification?
Conrad.
So, I mean, it's not a report that requires formal approval, for example, a cabinet or some other member committee. It can be done under delegated authority. The strategy and the policy, it's really kind of, operationally what we're going to do kind of point. As the officer says, of course, comments from the committee as to how it can be made better would be hugely welcome. But there isn't a sort of formal sign-off point at cabinet or something like that.
It's more the directorate.
Yeah. I mean, it's dealt with under Office of Delegated Authority, which would be normal and fine. But of course, comments from the committee as to how it can be made better would be hugely helpful.
Can I make a few quick comments on
Please.
the rest in writing? Page 6, about responsibility of repairs. It's unclear to me whether you're saying that the responsibility to take on repairs is the responsibility of the tenant or the tenant liaison officer who is visiting. So that might be something that you want to revisit. Second point, you reference in the policy document about, and there's a bit of confusion here for me, because you're talking about a programme where you've got planned audits, and you're estimating a third year of, you'll do a third each year of the 14,000.
Yes.
Yet you're later on then talking about cold calling and targeted, presumably information and intelligence that you've gathered around it as well. do those two aspects need, or operational routes need to be separated a little bit? Because at the moment you've sounded like you're accumulating both pools together.
Yeah, what I guess, perhaps giving your question rather clumsily, I think the point to be made was that whilst we're embarking on this planned tenancy audit, which will cover all 14,000 plus social housing tenants, within that period of time, we will not necessarily wait until we conduct those audits. If we get information, specific information about a tenancy or a tenant, then obviously we would act on that at that time. So it would still involve obviously one or more of any of the 14,000 tenants that we would have visited during the programme. But that's not to say that we would wait until we find the information if we're given some proactive information about a tenancy, which is what.
So just to put simply, are you then double accounting?
It's not.
If you've got what is it, 4,666 and 4,600, sorry, if you've got 4,665 and case 4,666 was an investigation lead or a tip-off that you'd had, would you count that as your 466 or would you count that separately?
I would count that as within the 14,000 social housing tenants that would be subject to a tenancy audit. The fact that we've done it a lot sooner than we potentially would have planned because of information we received. So we wouldn't double count it.
Okay, Councillor Chaddock, one question, Councillor Paul, please, one each. Sorry, Councillor Chaddock, Councillor Paul, we're going to move quickly and you know we're coming back to this at a later date, so.
Yeah, I just want to run it back.
Yes, and we've also got.
I feel professional, right? We've got this tenancy audit check supposed to be mandatory. It's not been done for 3 years. With a 30% error rate based on figures, you can't explain what the correct figures are. You haven't told us when we're going to get the correct figures, and I find it really unprofessional. In fact, shoddy. I'm choosing my word. I find it disrespectful to the committee, and I'm saying that to you, Tony, in your role. I'm looking at Darren Levy on the screen. It is unacceptable what has happened here. On the figures which you've given us, which you can't even explain to me how they're wrong or why they're wrong, there's a 30% error rate. I read the report. You've got 29 housing liaison officers whose role is to do the tenancy checks, but have not done the tenancy checks. So my question is, what have you been doing with our resources? What I will do, I will write via the chair and I will copy in Chief Executive, because I find this, right, in terms of corporate governance, we've got 14,000 council properties and you can't tell me who lives in them. That is unacceptable. I will make my comments through the chair in writing, and I don't want housing to come back to me in 2 months or a week. You've got to turn this around. This is unacceptable. And I want my comment noted. This is unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I'm going to ask Darren Levy, he's your line manager?
Darren is Director of Housing.
Could you come in, please, Darren, and respond in terms of why the tenancy audits hadn't been carried out and what is the actual plan? Because I think that links into Councillor Chadder's previous point. So has a physical plan been prepared to say you've got 29 posts? Are those fully occupied, or is there a recruitment process? We need to get a bit more understanding of what is the operational process of dealing with these tenancy audits. It's not very clear. So Darren, could you come in, please, just quickly? I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so Darren Levy, Director of Housing. Tony reports into Donna Morelli, who's the Assistant Director of Housing. Just to confirm, Newham has never been in a position in recent years for more than 4 years and more, ever been doing proactive tenancy audits across all its estates. It's not mandatory.
Can I just stop you? Why has it not been a position?
That's certainly a position we inherited when we went into COVID. There was no resource in place to do it.
So the 29 posts, have they all been established over the last 4 years then, 3 years?
They've been established in the last 2 years. So
and how many are occupied and how many are vacant, and what is the recruitment process?
I'll have to pass over to Tony for the detail of numbers of people currently in post and recruitment posters, but it's a constant rolling piece of recruitment because they're frontline teams and there's high turnover. We identified the gap in terms of there needing to be a rolling program of tenancy audits because it was certainly a gap for Newham and has been for some years. This policy marks a huge step forward for the council. It's the first time that the council's had a rolling tenancy audit program. Behind this program is a set of digitalized audits. So as housing officers carry out audits, they'll then be fed into a management system. So we'll be able to monitor on a monthly basis how many audits are being completed. I do apologise for the numbers that Tony referred to at the beginning. I need to catch up with Tony outside of the meeting, and I accept that that's unacceptable if they've been submitted without being checked, and we will pick that up separately. But I just want to make very clear this is a massive step forward for the council. This is a huge investment of resource into that team, into a team that's been built up over the past 2 years. And just in terms of the other things they picked up, that's the same team that's picked up all of the new mandatory fire risk assessment actions that are coming out of all the new fire risk assessment programs. They've picked up the program of work that have come through from the building safety and fire safety risk program of work. So all that team have been absorbing all of this. Rolling 100% programs of tenancy audits is good practice. Dealing with fraud is mandatory, and so the focus historically has been dealing with fraud. This will mark a massive step forward, but I take fully on board the points around the numbers.
Yeah, quickly, Councillor Penton, and
I think Councillor Higgins was before me.
Councillor Higgins, then please.
So I actually have quite a few comments on the policy, but we're talking about the report of the previous thing at the moment. So I'll talk about that.
Brief.
This is, Chair, with respect, this is a quite important topic.
It is a quite important topic.
Time it deserves.
Only you that has comments on the report.
I haven't spoke on this yet, Chair.
I'm saying it's
I
not.
have comments on the report as well.
Yes, I hear you. There's several people that want to speak. I've asked people to be brief, not just you, but everyone speaking at this.
I'm saying is there are two different documents here.
Two different.
And right now we're talking about the second one. I thought we would start with the first one, but I'll do my comments on the second one, but I want to be able to talk about the first one as well.
Please be brief.
Thanks. So on the tenancy audit performance, presumably as part of the estate ballot programs for carpenters and other estate ballots, we're having to do audits for that to make sure that only the people who can vote in those are given a vote, and that we do visits as part of that. Why don't we have the results of those processes in this? Because it's a similar process, right? Making sure that the people who live there, who say they live there, are living there in order to make sure they can vote in those ballots. It would be a good example of data, but we're just being told we don't really have historic data.
That's flawed, Chair.
Please, one at a time. Can you respond, please?
I'll try. So the Carpenters Estate scheme, that was a separate body of work, that particularly, in conjunction with Populo, who are managing that scheme. So that I would call that as a reactive part of the way in which we've been dealing with audits, because I just want to make it clear, just to clear up any misconception. It's not like we've not been doing any audits or tenancy checks. They haven't been done as part of a pre-programmed policy, rolling program policy across the whole stock, which is what this second document.
I'm just asking if we have data on the outcomes from when we visited people as part of the estate ballot programs.
I would have to check.
Okay,
I'll make a note of it and I'll certainly check.
Recording action.
That's fine. Next question, please. Just two questions.
That was my only question on the second part of the document, and it's probably best that we keep the questions on. Or would you like me to ask on the first bit?
Just deal with all your questions in one go, and then we can move on because we don't have time.
Okay. So as part of the rolling program, we're visiting housing, and there's a lot of opportunities to do other things while we're there. Previous meetings, we've heard about student council tax fraud. Is that not something that we could be assessing at the same time? Perhaps housing benefit fraud. The previous iterations of the document also reference gas and ASB, and I was wondering perhaps that these people could be trained in identifying domestic violence as well. It seems like a lost opportunity if we're visiting and we're not looking for those other things as well. So that was my first question on the policy. And the second question was, it seems here that we only want to give people 48 hours notice to be able to visit their home and that they have to be present. People with busy work schedules, that is not acceptable. That's not a realistic amount of notice. I've written down here that it needs to be at least 2 weeks, I would imagine, especially considering if they miss 3 of them in a row, then that's a breach of their tenancy. Well, if you just 3 times in a row, give them 48 hours notice on a weekday, then they're going to miss all 3 of them. Then they're going to tenancy through no fault of their own. Not enough care has been given to the experience of the tenant in considering how to organise these visits.
So the visits, the mandatory part of the tenancy audit for the tenant is outlined in the current terms and conditions of their tenancy. And this information about the conduct of a potential audit to their property is set out in that way. I make the notes about more notice. And of course, as in all cases, the way we treat residents, we treat them fairly and with respect, and we're flexible about the way we approach this.
And into the policy,
it's written to reflect what's in tenancy terms and conditions.
I just don't think 48 hours notice is realistic, and we're setting tenants up to fail by saying that we're going to give them only 48 hours notice.
I'll take that point.
Thank you.
I'll take that point, and I've made a note.
And then there was the other point that I already made about the other things that you do while you're there.
Yeah,
That's been noted.
I just want to say some of that. I know some of the data is incorrect that you said, but I just wanted to understand how realistic you think the new program is, given that the performance data, whether cumulative or not, suggests that you did maybe 1,300 in the space of 1 year, and now we're expecting to do 14,000 in the space of 3 years. Unless I've got something that seems quite unrealistic, and I don't know how. I just wanted to understand how you think that's going to be achievable.
yeah. In terms of the resource ability to do this program now, we've now got the resources in the team. Albeit back to the original point, all posts are not filled. We've currently got a recruitment process ongoing to fill at least 4 permanent posts, and that's been the position during the whole course of the presidency. We've never been fully staffed, but we have in recent times given some of our tasks and functions to other parts of the housing team, which will now allow us time to program these.
600 a year.
Well,
Yeah.
it's really like 1,000 to 4,600, really
Yeah.
big.
So with the data, I did make the point about the data. I think a lot of this data derives also from the full team's work, which is, whilst we work close together, it obviously separate. In terms of the data around carrying out tenancy audits and the target as a 3-year rolling programme, as I've set out in the document, is 3 to 4 tenancy audit visits a week per officer. It will be managed on a monthly basis. It will be subject to key performance indicators, and it will be managed within my service in terms of monitoring, reviewing and managing. It is an ambitious programme, but it needs to be, if we're going to do it over a 3-year programme, to cover every single
And you're
opportunity we have.
assumption that these 29% are, or you're going to have something in place to replace whatever. If
Yeah, we always try to do that. Some of the difficulties have been in recent times where we've filled those vacancies, for instance, with agency workers, and so we have to balance the against that as well, and against other competing demands and priorities. And Darren mentioned about the enhanced block and the block inspections with the enhanced fire and building safety inspections that my team have been carrying out in recent time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Booker's been waiting for a while.
Councillor Booker, then Councillor Penton, and then we're moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be really brief because I had questions that are probably not needed anymore because of the data stuff. But what I want to say is thank you, Tony, because I know it's really hard when you know that you've got a report that's wrong to sit there and you know have to ask questions of it. So I appreciate that that's a difficult position for you to be in. My request, I suppose, would be is I know that there was a bit of a form set up to make sure that there was a quality check done on all papers that were going to major committees. And so, Darren, I don't know if that's not happened in this particular case, because actually the figures I think might be so out of kilter that it should have been able to have been picked up by site, because if you look at the like notional values of the amounts of money, then it just wouldn't make sense anyway. And that may be that I've misunderstood that, but I think that it looks like the numbers might be really quite wrong. And so I think there could have been some quality checks on it that would have been good. And if that isn't happening as a standard, then I think it should happen as a standard for all papers that come to audit, because we've had this on other papers as well that haven't been in housing too. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Booker. Councillor Penton.
Forgive me, because I was at the room when you started on this item, so I didn't hear how you were going to approach this. I am a bit concerned. First of all, we've got a report I understand has been acknowledged that isn't up to scratch and probably shouldn't have been presented here. I'm not going to focus on that because I think it's unfair and we should discuss that when it comes back. But I am very concerned that we've in effect not had a policy to inspect our council property for several years. And I don't, Chair, with respect, I don't think we should brush over this. I think it's significant.
Sorry, excuse me, Councillor. We are not rushing over it, but we do have an agenda.
I said rushing over it.
We're not rushing. We have an agenda and we have to try and stick. We've already gone over the time. There are other things on the.
That's because it's of significant.
Yes, there are other significant things, and everybody wants to speak, and I'm going to allow for everyone to speak.
Okay. Well, can I ask 2 or 3 questions then, Darren? So first of all, I'll just make a point, and I'll ask the questions. I don't know about other councillors, but I do not regard it as a significant major step forward or whatever formal words. The fact that you said that we are now inspecting homes that we haven't done for several years. And I frankly find that attitude really quite disturbing. And I just want to place that on record. I can say my own words. Thanks, Councillor Paul. Secondly, the question I have for you, first of all, is you said we haven't done this for a number of years. Can you tell me when we stopped our policy of inspecting or auditing tenants? If you don't have the figures in front of you, can you provide that to us in writing?
Please note that, Chair, Clerk, that he needs to provide that in writing.
Well, my question, do you have those figures now, Darren, or will you need to provide those in writing?
As far as I can see from the records I've got, Newham has always only operated on a reactive basis.
So you're saying we've never had an audit? We've never had a policy of auditing our properties.
Of 100% auditing, no, not as far as I can see. There may have been one 10 or 15 years ago, but certainly in terms of recent years, there is no formal policy on record. When I said it was a big step forward, I meant that we're introducing a policy for the first time in
let's not
many years.
Forgive me, that was a statement, isn't it? So you're not sure. Please, can you ask your officials to go back and look over? I don't want to be too backward, but tell us when we last did this. And then we need to, I think, understand why we haven't done it since. My second question, and I can see the chair's face, so I'm going to leave it. I am very concerned that, notwithstanding the work of the team, the officers which now been expanded, the reality is we don't know who's living in our properties to a significant degree, or we can't be certain because we haven't inspected them. We've got this committee looks at a number of things. Well, we know we've got major exposure on issues to do with building new properties, and what we need to make sure is that our underlying case for why we need to build significant properties is not being significantly distorted by the fact that we may have homes that are not being lived in by residents, and we're planning to build homes for residents when in fact they could be housed in homes that are currently being lived in by people who aren't on the priority register or shouldn't be living in them. what confidence can you give us that the impact of not inspecting our homes for many years means that we have an accurate assessment of who is living in our homes?
So while there has been, that there hasn't been that proactive 100% audit, there is still a huge amount of investigation, inspection where issues are found. And when you look at some of those numbers, the numbers of properties we recover from reactive investigations that we do along with the fraud team is pretty significant. And when you look at the number of properties we recover along with the fraud team compared with other boroughs, we're getting back, considerable numbers of properties. So I think that, so I think there should be some comfort that where we're reacting to suspected cases, they're being investigated. There are obviously always going to be cases that, unless you carry out a proactive inspection regime, which is exactly why we're investing in the resource to do it, and exactly why we're introducing the policy, because it is so important. But until you do that 100%, you're not going to establish everybody. But that's, I think we're all absolutely in agreement that this is something the borough needs to introduce. It's something the borough needs to invest in, and it's why we've kind of brought a policy to place.
I don't think we're in agreement. Actually, that it's something that the council needs to introduce. Because first of all, it is mandatory, but secondly, I think we're pretty astounded, frankly. I look at councillors and members here that we haven't done this. Now, so this is the chair. I would request. I understand the time, but for next, so for obviously, this will be the last meeting of the audit committee in this current council year. But I would request that. I do think some significant time needs to be put at the next.
I'm actually going to suggest that we have a deep dive in housing and have a separate session just on housing, as there are a number of housing issues that need to be. So I'm drawing this item to a close and we are moving on. And I want us as a committee to consider trying to manage the time. Not all questions need to be asked now. Some can be put in writing, but we need to be considerate of the time and of each other by allowing each other to ask questions, not deciding that I want to ask all the questions and there isn't time for other people. So please, let's move forward.
Thank you, Chair.
If you ask me to vote on this now, I'm voting no.
No further questions, Councillor Higgins. I've just said that. Item 6. Okay,
Chair.
Sorry. Yes, to members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands, is the recommendation agreed? Fine, that's fine. You don't have to agree.
Okay, thank you.
Item 6, I just said we're going to have a deep dive. This can come back. There are several issues that you're all aware of as councillors, that there are issues within the housing service for the. So it cannot all be resolved at this committee tonight. I'm aware of that, and I'm suggesting that we have a special session on that.
Thank you.
So please, can you please just consider the agenda as well, and that I'm trying to manage it. It's not just about one agenda item. There are several important agenda items tonight. Item 6, accounting policy for 23-24. I will take the report as read. I invite Officer Munir Hall to comment on the highlighted change in the policy about rounding for immaterial values. Would you please explain what this means, Munir, to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to thank one of my team, George Steer, for producing this, one of our SIT for trainees, and it's part of their training that they produced a report for this committee. In terms of the new accounting policies, this is the only new one for 24-25, and it is to alleviate the need to change a number of notes where there are small roundings, so 1 or 2 difference between the notes and the primary statements, simply because the way the notes are produced. On a rare occasion, it may go up towards the triviality level, so it's below the level would need to be reported by EY in their annual audit report, but it's just to sort of prevent lots of time spent on very, very small differences in terms of that. As you can see, apart from that accounting policy for 23-24, sorry, the policies haven't changed significantly, changed for years where that's change is necessary. And then Appendix 2 set out accounting policies that take effect from the 1st of April 2024 and will affect the
for 25 accounts. The first one set out is one that UM is adopting for the first time regarding the capitalisation of interest on borrowing. Up till now, local authorities haven't considered it because it's not been a major issue, but as members probably aware, many councils are facing difficulties. Many councils are adopting this approach of capitalising the interest on borrowings for major capital schemes where construction will last for more than 1 year, and Newham's decided a value of anything more than 5 million will be capitalising that interest while that asset is under construction. It happens in the private sector now, it's just local authorities haven't done it. And I think it's the impact of the current financial situation that a number are, and including you, are going down this route. And then the second one from the 1st of April is the change regarding leases in IFRS 16, which has been in progress for a number of years. Some authorities have early adopted it. We're adopting it at the later stage. A lot of work's been done on it, and it only impacts where the council is the lessee. So from the 1st of April 2024, all leases where the council is a lessee comes onto the balance sheet, with 2 exceptions where they are short-term leases, so less than 12 months to run, or they are of low value, so anything less than £10,000 won't be brought on. There's no impact where the council is a lessor, so that doesn't change that policy. So if members have any questions.
Councillor Paul, please.
It's a line question around group accounts. This year, a number of issues have come to this committee when there's issues raised about the value of external companies. Also, how will we account for that? I think this year we signed off the accounts before we had an impairment. I think it was unpopular. So just a general question, and I'm not an accountant, so please excuse if I've got my terminology wrong.
We will produce.
I just want assurance group accounts will accurately reflect all the external companies. There's an issue on the value of the assets.
Yeah, so we'll incorporate the group accounts in the ordinary way. The accounts of all of the council's subsidiaries are prepared in line with international financial reporting standards or the other relevant standards according to the nature of the company. They're all subject to external audit. Council's consolidated group accounts aren't signed by the external auditor until they have, also considered the evidence from the auditors of the group companies, as is ordinary in any consolidation situation. The process of preparing the accounts deals with any issues of potential impairments. So just to demystify that if needed, part of the process of preparing statements is to look at the value of the assets of the entity that you're concerned with, the amount of money owed to it. A good example would be debtors owed for council tax. We know that some of them won't be paid because all historic experience tells that. And so the technical term is one impairs the value of the asset according to the estimated non-payment rate. The same sort of thing can apply in respect of, for example, the valuations of property where there is clear evidence that something has happened. So in an extreme case, for example, if a building is burnt down or something like that, one would impair that in the financial statements, and the external audit process for the subsidiaries and the consolidated statements picks that up and provides officers and the committee assurance that that's been accounted for.
Thank you, Medic. Thanks.
Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. The report mentions some PFI contracts that are still in place. It's not particularly relevant for making our accounts, but it's worth asking anyway. Do we know how much longer we will be in those PFI contracts?
We do.
If you don't know it, it's
I don't, I mean,
fine.
I think that there are a range of dates from around 27 to 35 or 36, something like that.
Over 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, so the substantial PFI through the East London Waste Authority, I know expires in 27. I'm pretty sure some of the housing ones are between 28 and 35. There's also a couple of schools that I think are more in the sort of mid-30s bracket. We have the exact details of that, but those are the...
Those dates be provided. Thank you.
Any further questions? I will now at the record speak. Councillor Booker, she's still there?
No, she's set to.
Okay, okay. Oh, Councillor Chowdhury, didn't know he was online. Okay. I will now read out the recommendations. Audit Committee is recommended to approve the accounting policies for 23-24 as set out in Appendix 1, which are in line with the Code of Practice on Local Authority Accounting in the United Kingdom 2023-24. To members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands if the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Item 7, quarterly report of contract waivers. Take the report as read. Mentioned earlier under the actions log, the 3-year history of waivers per directorate has been circulated, but not in time for proper consideration of the details. So I ask that a response is added to the agenda pack for the next ordinary committee. Is the committee happy with that suggestion? Councillor Paul?
Oh, yeah, sorry, miles away. Yeah.
Are there any questions on the report or shall we move on? Okay, Councillor Chowdhury, please.
2 quick questions. We seem to have in the last quarter 13 waivers, which is higher than the average. Is that because we've not had them over the financial year? Second question, integrated advocacy.
Yeah.
Number 5. Is it usual for us to accept a verbal agreement as a means going forward on a contract? It seems, given our issues around in other places around procurement, I know it's a relatively small amount, but it does seem a little bit out of place.
Okay, so let me take those. So 13 is relatively high. Again, I will make the point that we show all of the ones that you receive here or that were requested here, just those approved. So the 13 includes 3 that were rejected, but even 10 approved, relatively high. I don't believe that there's any evidence that that's linked to the timing of the financial year. Because the contract end dates, don't particularly follow the end of the financial year. So some of it is simply coincidental. So, for example, the first one I know because I investigated it myself. The summer reading challenge. There really is only one sort of recognised national supplier for that, and so you're going to have a waiver if you're going to run that programme, unless you want to spin up one yourself, which would be relatively expensive, but it's not linked to the end of the financial year. I don't know the detail on number 5, the integrated advocacy contract. I do know the point though that it was rejected. So that was the reason given was not sufficient to have the request for the waiver granted.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chowdhury, please.
Yes, my question's about number 4, the security services. So it says the reason for the waivers that we've been using them for 20 years, is that really a sufficient reason to keep using the same supplier? Should I not go out to re-tender on a regular basis to make sure the council's getting best value for money?
It's not, I know because I sign off that there will have been considerably more detail provided. What you're getting here is a 1-line summary, and in that case it clearly does not convey all the information necessary. So I agree with you, and we will provide the full detail of the waiver form that went with that and the correspondence that went with it, because that reason alone, I agree, would not have been sufficient, and it wouldn't have been signed on that basis. I might make a request, Chair.
Yes.
I'll do my level best with these. I mean, it's really helpful if we know in advance which ones committee members want to ask about, so that we can have the relevant officers there, because in my defence, I can't necessarily remember.
No, that's fine, Conrad.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Katerina, who's part of that report, has her hand up.
Okay,
I don't know
Katerina.
if she has an answer to that.
Can you come in, please?
Yes, with regards to the security services one, this is because we are consolidating all our sites as part of a major corporate contract. And instead of doing a procurement just for one site in isolation because it was coming to an end, we actually put it as part of the procurement strategy to think that is co-terminus with the overall picture.
What does that mean?
That's that means is because we are running for all our sites, consolidated all our sites on a major security contract, and this already had on its own. Rather than running a procurement just for 1 year, we thought we'd just make it co-terminus with the current major contract that is out for a major procurement.
So in other words, in a year's time, we'll be able to run a full comprehensive procurement for all of the security services in question. Had we run a procurement for this one at that point in time, we could then never have lined it up with all of the others. And so a waiver was necessary to line up all of the end dates in order to get to a long-term better position. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Conrad.
Update that on the waiver reason.
Thanks, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Higgins, please.
I was also asking about security waivers. I'm just a bit confused. There's 2 different security waivers on here. Does the answer that we were just given apply to both of them? Because the reason written is quite different for the 2 of those. I don't know if that reason explains both of them, because on Councillor Chowdhury asked about number 4, but on number 2, time to do the procurement is like a reason we keep being told for waivers, and it's like exactly not the reason that you should do this. And if what Katerina's just said explains it better than what's written here, then that's understandable. But we keep being told this.
No, I get the point entirely. So we clearly need to improve the quality of the summaries provided here. But those 2 are sort of linked. So the point on all of those is to be able to let a better contract forward, but we'll have to do some waivers to do that.
Yeah, Conrad, I mean, I take on board your point about us flagging up early which ones of concern, but also
still had a better report.
I understand that. I was going to say it would be helpful, I think, because one of them we expended some time on, and you said, well, that one was rejected. In future, can we have a column which shows which ones were approved and which ones were rejected?
It is there. It's there.
Oh, sorry, it's not showing on my. Maybe I haven't just scroll over the tab.
It's the 4th column along. I think it might be easier if we split them rather than just showing them in the order that they were considered, date order. If we split them between all.
Oh, sorry, forgive me. I missed.
Approved.
Yeah, that wasn't easy because I was trying. Okay, I take that back. But maybe if it's presented a bit easier.
Yeah, it could be presented more clearly. I accept.
Awesome, please.
On a broader point, we thought that 8 of the 10 approved waivers are usually the competition process is not possible if the goods and services are of a price nature. If this is the case, should they even be? It doesn't. Should there be another process for where you cannot use a normal procurement process? Because if these are monopoly, you can only go to one provider. It seems. For us, it highlights 8 that maybe shouldn't be there, because there should be another process there. I don't know if I'm making it.
Are you able to comment on that, please?
I'm not quite sure I agree with that, but maybe I'm slightly misunderstanding the point. But it seems to me the principle of what we're trying to do is to say the default position is you want to buy something, you go out to a competitive procurement process. In some cases, that won't be practical. That may be for very bad reasons because you didn't allow yourself long enough to do it. It may be for reasons like the security contract that we've discussed, where you want to do something better in the future and you need to change the dates to do that. It may be that you have looked at the matter and there genuinely is only one reasonable option to go for. But then my view would be that having the waiver process allows a test and a check and a challenge to that. And so, it's healthy to have that there. And then by agreeing waiver, at least required, if we agreed, at least we enable the procurement team and myself to test whether the argument's given as to whether there truly is only one.
And is that challenged?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't sign any of these off lightly, and Katerina and the team explain in more detail if needed. The checks are gone through before they even reach me.
Yeah, because that's a risk that if someone just says, "Oh, this is the only one that could do it for us," and got to a point where it's too late to do a procurement process. And you just, okay, I'm gonna go with it sort of thing, as some of those challenges are. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the limits to that sort of challenge need to be, you know, kind of proportionate. I don't go and research the market myself, although Katarina and the team may well have done on some of those occasions to sort of verify what is. But there certainly is a challenge in there, I can assure you of that.
Councillor Chadder, please.
And just on, it's kind of connected to this and the action log, and I think maybe this is a question for the next meeting. On AC 201, on the action log, there's a discussion around it says that you don't have full year data for certain parts. And I just wondered, can we at the next meeting get a breakdown of what are the gaps in your procurement register? I think we've hit on it a couple of times at this committee, and it'd just be useful to know, and bearing in mind that the new legislation is about to come in as well, what framework do you need to be confident in the procurement process?
Yeah, I mean, there's always an issue, isn't there, about how you can find out and know that which you don't know. So, yeah, but there is a clear system in place that requires items to be placed on the contract register. Katarina might perhaps give a sort of very brief summary of that for the committee now, if that's helpful. Obviously, it does, as with all sorts of things, depend on compliance. There are checks in place, for example, to identify where there's expenditure that's not linked to a contract that ought to be, in other words, to sort of catch something after the fact and put it on the contract register. You know, for myself, for example, monthly at my management team meeting, I will go through a list of all of the entries on the contract register for our department. You know, one, as a means of checking, you know, are we on track with this? And two, as a means of checking, you know, indeed whether there are issues that people spot or other errors that need to be corrected. So that there are systems in place. I mean, you can never be, of course, completely sure that you've got everything on it because you don't know what you don't know. I mean, it might be helpful if
Katarina, can you come in?
you could just speak for a minute on that.
Yeah, I haven't heard everything from the council, I'm sorry, but if it is about the contract register process, yes, we do run that, and as part of our pipeline forward, we have review dates and we have meetings with the directorates where we flag quite early as 12 months upfront, and we say you need to do a procurement on this because it's a procurement activity. However, the waivers you have, the majority of them, they're either on-off or single suppliers by way of copyrights, or, you know, generally there's a national supplier there, like the Summer Reading Challenge, or there are cases that we need to make co-terminus of a better procurement. They're not because they failed to meet the timeline or the contract end and we weren't there in a timely manner. Have I missed?
I don't think that quite answers my point, but I don't want to take up time in the meeting. I'll write to.
Okay, I'll now read out the recommendation. For the reasons set out in the report, the committee is asked to note the summary of waivers for the period 1st of January 2024 to 31st of March 2024. The members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands, is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Item 8, quarterly update on risk management and risk register. This is a substantive report and I would like to allocate 30 minutes for its consideration. Before I ask the officer to introduce the report, you will note on page 88 of the report, Risk 15 LLDC did not have an officer update. The clerk circulated an email to the committee earlier today which said, "Dear members, I've been advised that the owner of Risk 15 LLDC is currently Vicky Clark and no longer James Partis. Vicky Clark is about to leave the council and will hand over to Paul Kitson, who I believe is here tonight. I asked for clarification on whether there are any updates on the LLDC risk, and the reply from Vicky was as below. The Mayor continues to meet with residents on this issue. The most recent meeting was held on the 12th of March 2024. At that meeting, information was shared regarding energy price changes and future proposals for increased regulation, both of which start to stabilise district heating costs for residents. Given the above, I think we might be able to move the rating down slightly. General commentary, I'm not sure whether this matter should be listed on the corporate risk register. That was the reply from the officer. Clark's recollection that the risk was added at the request of the audit committee. So with the new residual risk rating of 6, I would invite the members to advise during the discussion if they think the risk can be moved off the corporate risk register. Paul, did you have any comments?
Nothing to add to Vicky's email, no, thank you, Chair.
Any comment, any questions? Councillor Higgins.
Just responding to the point about LLDC. So I think there's, if I recall, 3 different parts of the LLDC risk register. All of them do feel appropriate to be on here. And one of them, which as the relevant ward councillor I care a lot about, which is the experience of residents in the district heating scheme and fixed estate charge, but it doesn't seem relevant for audit committee because it's more of a political campaigning council. So it seems more relevant for scrutiny than it does for audit. That's not to say that I don't care a lot about it. I do, because I'm the relevant ward councillor. But I think that the 2 about the transition, so about planning and about liabilities on assets, I think absolutely should be on our risk register. But about fixed estate charge and district heating, I don't think should be.
Fine.
I don't know how other members feel.
Councillor Paul.
Higgins, I think 2 issues, planning and assets. I think it should stay on there until incorporation of LLD function, and perhaps 6 months after we can review, because there's the issue of the planning system, planning application and staff. I also want to share a slight issue about on the estate charge, we're talking about lobbying, right? I think people, homes and financial being messing about with. So I would like some data here about what's the liability of the charge and the park. And if it's called lobbying, it goes away from us. But definitely come on there. We haven't got full assurance, but the organisation has done what it needs to do to prepare for the incorporation of the functions into it.
Conrad, please.
I'm slightly concerned, Chair, we might be going back to conflating 2 issues that I thought we had just separated. I thought there was clear agreement, and I certainly agree, transition of the assets and liabilities from LLDC to the council is a significant matter. No question of that. We're going to acquire a bunch of assets and liabilities, and making sure that is dealt with properly, etc., is of course a significant issue, and it's appropriate to be on the corporate risk register. That for the residents concerned, the kind of charge associated with that area in the district heating system, all the complexities of that, are a matter of concern to affected by it. But I thought we had agreed that those were coming off the corporate risk register, and so to come back to the audit committee would seem inappropriate.
At that point, a comment. Or
sorry, I've misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I wasn't clear, so I apologise. Planning and assets, yes. The comment, I'm just nervous. When we talk about lobbying, and we're dealing with people's lives. That's like that was a comment more. So
Chair, so the detail I'm a bit thin on, but I think the word lobbying should really be about negotiating and influencing the commercial deal. It's not really political lobbying; it's about influencing the right commercial deal for people. From a negotiation point, that's maybe a language issue, Councillor.
Within the residual, this is 2 years old now. Within the residual part of the LLDC, they have a commercial imperative to drive revenue to pay for their functions, right?
Yeah.
That's not in here. So can you look at that commercial imperative? Could they have a commercial imperative on the park when we, let's say, have suboptimal commercial objectives for the council? And I think the 2 could be odds with each other. So if that commerciality for the LLDC, have we discharged ourselves with liability on that? Because I think that's an impact, and I can talk to you outside the meeting if you want. But
if you forgive me, it is worth saying that the commercial part of the park is not something that the council is going to become liable for. The actual operation of the park itself is going to continue to be the LLDC. The council is taking planning and highways and that sort of thing.
Certainty, but there's no blowback on it. But you're right.
Okay, I just need to add some further things. Members, if you will also note on page 95 of the agenda pack, Appendix C, Environment and Sustainable Transport Directorate Risk is missing from the report. I have been contacted separately by the corporate director who has sent his sincere apologies for this omission and has agreed to circulate this by the 22nd of April. And it will be added to the next agenda pack for the public record. I'll now invite Nick Sharp to give us comments on the risk register and the appendices and other questions. Nick, if you want to come.
No problem. Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I'll take the report as read. The main issue I just would raise would be we are kind of haven't seen any ideas, as mentioned last time, as to improvements that can be made in the way that we risk register, what might be on there. So I appreciate if I don't have those now, but just a reminder that if you want to provide any feedback, then happy to take that in writing to me separately or write it for yourself in order to get everyone's opinion.
Okay, Councillor Paul, please.
Just a right comment, perhaps. I noticed the board discussed this matter in January. Still waiting for smoke to appear from the senior manager.
Sorry, you repeat that? I didn't quite hear what you said.
The 1.4 board, 1.4, that's this matter in January. There is from that body for them to decide the preferred option. Personally, I think I would run with a convention at the last meeting. I prefer the existing system with some risk managers. I know there's some financial however, due to the conversation we had earlier around housing and there's some other issues, we're not very good as an organisation in managing our risks. Therefore, I would like greater assurance, and that might be in the role of risk managers. So please, can the senior leadership team bring this to a continued operational plan on their preferred way forward?
Sorry, Nick. So just at point 1.4, was there any comment back from the senior leadership team?
Yeah, sorry, do you want?
No, you go.
Yep. I mean, so I think no one was suggesting some of the sort of more radical options at the end of the list, kind of there for completeness, I think, as much as anything else. It's difficult to argue, I think, that, you know, some investment in risk managers, if it helps us to deal with some of the more substantial risks, might not be a good investment. I think be a bit realistic, I think, about, you know, our ability to attract the sort of right people for those sort of roles. I do sort of strongly feel that some of the risks that are on there, and that this is, you know, sort of option 2, if you like, in the or 2 and 3 in the list. We have some risks on there that are just generic statements. I mean, I'll refer to the CYP one because Laura Eden, the new Director of Children's, has joined the meeting, so chance to raise it. You know, we rightly sort of highlight that, of course, you know, if you're responsible for children's services, there will always be significant safeguarding and associated risks. And we kind of have a whole department, you know, whose function, raison d'etre, if you like, is to deal with that. I really question sometimes the benefit of putting some of those generic risks on your risk register and kind of summarising the activity of such a large department into 3 or 4 lines on A4. And, you know, my own view, if the committee are content with that, is that we should focus on the kind of more active risks that really manage at that strategic level, rather than, as I sometimes feel, going to this register as a sort of listing lots of things that are just, you know, inherent in the nature of what we're doing. So that, you know, that would be my view on that. I take the point made about investing in risk managers. Investment's difficult in the current time, but I can see that that could derive some benefits.
So sorry, Conrad. So with point 1.4, the senior management team didn't have any specific feedback, or they've not addressed that?
No, I think I'm summarising, you know, the main views that were expressed there. I mean, we didn't say, and we will do this, because, you know, we wanted the discussion with the audit committee.
Okay.
You know, I think that's a fair summary of you know, where the discussion went, but I mean, it wasn't, you know, I think that's what I've got to say about it.
Can I just clarify? So that's the summary, but were there any outcomes that we should be aware of?
Oh, I mean, yeah, the outcome was that we wanted to have the discussion with the audit committee. I've fed back to you on what I think, the sort of main consensus view there was. Not everyone completely agreed, but that, we should try and focus the corporate risk register down much better to those risks that can be managed actively. I think at the moment it includes too many risks, some of which are they're in the nature of running our business. We have whole systems and departments dedicated to dealing with those issues. I'm personally sceptical about the value of adding that onto the risk register. So I'm not sure it adds a great deal to that. Whereas by contrast, the discussion we've just had on the LLDC, that's a live and active project that isn't in our ordinary business, that we should actually actively manage the risk on. And then at some point in a year's time, hopefully it comes off the risk register and is dealt with something else. I think if your risk register has always got the same risks on it, then you're probably not managing it in the right way.
Conrad. Councillor Chadder, please.
We seem to have forgotten two things that we did agree at the last meeting, I think, to review this in line with the peer review, because that was where most of the risks to us would be highlighted as well. So I think maybe a focused piece of work around that would be helpful in coming to a decision about what happens next. The other thing I would say as well, back to your point, Conrad, about and I think at the last meeting, I was quite in agreement with you about contracting this register and taking some of the generic risks out. But reflecting on this year in terms of what this committee has done, I think we would not have brought to light the tenancy audit challenges, the GDPR challenges, the stuff about PS and personnel, if we hadn't been prompted by this as a risk register. So for my purposes, I think this is a good stimulus to actually help us dive deeper into some of more of those tricky issues. So that's just a comment there. Chair, I've got two specific questions on two risks. Is that okay? Yes. On section 5, we're talking about personnel, people and culture. And we're talking about in the last 3 months, we've had 17 calls to Tell Jane. For people who don't know, that's the council's kind of long arm HR kind of support to do with bullying and toxic.
Yeah, Tell Jane is a service that a number of organisations use. It enables you to anonymously to report alleged instance of workplace bullying. The council signed up to it a few months ago.
Could we ask Jane, because I don't know if 17 is a high number or too low or whatever. Could we ask them if they can draw on their data from comparable organisations and tell us whether 17 is too high? Because I think that's something that is useful as an indicator of the culture issue as well. My second point was around LATCOs. It says that the business plans for LATCOs will be approved by July. Now, bearing in mind that at one point we had that challenge around Poplo, that their business plan wasn't approved for a year, and that then led to a backlog of challenges for them. Is there any way that we can fast forward the approval of business plans for the LATCOs? Because this would, to me, seem to be a considerable risk if we don't get it, if we don't coincide it with the financial year.
Yeah, can I take that?
Yes.
So on Tell Jane, I asked pretty much the same question. What we saw, and obviously it's always difficult to be sure about relative sizes of organisations, we'll put that to one side. What we saw was the 17 that you see on there reported relatively quickly, which I think what we take from that is that there was certainly a backlog of issues that employees wanted to report into Tell Jane. We've seen the subsequent monthly figures falling significantly, which kind of supports that theory that there were a number of issues that employees wanted to report, that we are not seeing a high level of ongoing complaints. And so, that doesn't completely answer the question of is it a high number or not, but I think what it hopefully tells us, but some more data would be helpful, is that we're not seeing, a dozen cases being reported each month or something like that, which...
With respect, Conrad, we are just in the first 3 months.
Yes.
And so that's also the impetus of the new programme coming on board, etc.
That's what the data we have to date suggests, I agree you would want, at least 6 months, if not more data to be, confident, that was definitely the case. We will certainly go back to tell Jane, and see, the extent to which they can provide us with benchmarking data. I mean, there'll be limitations on it, as I say. In terms of the, LATCOs, the Populo business plan was approved at Cabinet in February.
This year.
Yes, February 24.
But I'm talking about in previous years, it's been late.
Yes, but I like to look forward. We look in the present one, man. Plan, I'm pretty sure was Cabinet in April. No, hang on, March 24. Let me double check that one. But and those are by some distance the two most substantial of the trading companies. And they have, therefore the ones that would require that sign off. The other ones, I agree. July 24 is not the most ambitious date for those, is it? So let's accelerate that one.
Okay, Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Just from a governance perspective, I'm just confused. This decision about whether to change the risk register, whose decision actually is that? And are we being asked to approve that change or just for comments so that whoever does make that decision can use our comments to make that decision?
You're being asked for comments.
Okay.
Out of those, I will then bring back the same or a revised risk register next quarter.
Oh, so you make the decision about the form of the risk register?
Yes, but I mean,
I was just trying to work out if.
But yes,
exactly we were being asked. Okay. Generally my view is similar to Councillor Charters. It just based on experiences, I would be quite nervous about changing it at this point, just because we haven't had the smoothest of times as a council recently. I was going to ask about what the CLB's thoughts were about it, but we've gone over that, so that's fine. A general point about when on the risk register, when the residual risk is higher than the risk appetite, it's great that we're sort of seeing what the proposed actions are. What I would like to see is the date we then expect that to bring the residual risk rating down to risk appetite. In a lot of cases, that's missing. And it's sort of like, okay, this is great, but when can we expect to be back within our risk appetite? So that's a general comment. My specific question was about the LLDC handover, and it's just talks about that the LLDC delegate powers to the end to support the handover. When do we know when that's happening?
Okay,
if we don't know. We can.
So we like that. One of the points of the risk register is to compare the level of the risk to the risk you're comfortable tolerating, and therefore. Absolutely the point that the actions by X date hopefully should achieve that. I think it's probably important to be a bit realistic in that I doubt there is any council in the country, I'm not sure there's any organisation in the country that is going to say, yes, we're comfortable with our level of cyber risk, for example, because it's just one of those things where risk is probably always going to be really higher than what you would really choose to tolerate in an ideal world. So I think we have to be a bit realistic.
But then you look at the actions.
Teasing that out,
I appreciate that, but then you look at the actions, and what we need to do has been identified. That there's actions back from 21 that just haven't been done.
And this goes to to that point about wanting to make the risk register more active. In an ideal world, if you could risk register to the risk register a year ago, it would look very different because you've dealt with and successfully managed a number of the risks on it, and new ones would have come through. I agree that there is a point about some things staying on there with end dates for actions to tackle that. So that's absolutely.
And I guess it's like what we say our risk appetite is and what our revealed risk appetite is, because if we say it's a certain thing and then we don't do the actions to get us to that point, then clearly we're actually accepting a higher level of risk, and perhaps we should be honest with ourselves about that.
And cybersecurity is a great example of that, because the costs of getting to the level of massive assurance that you would sort of really want in an ideal world, you might have to accept are too great, and you have to tolerate a level of risk. That's a challenge that every organisation in the country struggles with, because you can never spend enough on cyber security, but you can't afford to spend everything you want. But I completely agree. You know, that's why we show the risk rating and the risk appetite precisely to drive those points out. On LLDC, not my field of expertise, and I don't know, Paul, the extent to which you may be able to come in. I mean, my understanding is that legislation has been passed that, or is in the process of being passed, that will transfer the planning powers to the council in December 24.
Yes.
I think the date for the transfer of the assets and liabilities is very much, you know, part of the risk management and
that's not
negotiation.
a question, because I know that the powers are transferring in December. What this suggested is that LBN is going to get involved in planning decisions sooner, so that when that happens, any live applications LBN is already involved in, and that powers will be delegated to enable that. But when?
Councillor, we don't know. So can I write to you?
Yes.
Meeting with details on that specific point. I know the point you're making and referring to in the.
So is it you don't have the information now, or is it something that is unknown?
I don't have the information to hand.
That's fine. That's fine. Councillor Chowdhury, please.
Okay, my question's in relation to risk 6 about climate change. You might have seen in the news today that the Scottish Government have abandoned their 2030 net zero target. So I'm wondering whether there's similar reflection happening in Newham, but in particular around this risk, it seems to group several in one and doesn't mention external funding as a risk, although that is mentioned in the control. And I wonder whether actually funding should be a bigger risk when it comes to this net zero target, and whether there should be specific controls around not getting funding from external sources.
Conrad, please.
So I wasn't aware of the news about the Scottish Government. The council hasn't agreed any change to its 2030 target. Remains challenging, I'm sure, as everyone will acknowledge, to deliver. I think it's probably a fair point about external funding. We know that there are a number of such sources and so far have been successful in attracting some substantial sums in for that. It's equally true those, you know, although they've enabled us to do good and helpful things, you know, we would need much more in order to be able to deliver net zero across scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. So I agree, and we should update the risk for that point accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Penton, please.
Yeah, I had questions about two areas. Just first of all, on section 9 on financial risk, which is highlighted as red and the residual risk register, but yellow in moderate. You make reference here, I think this is in light of the proposed changes to the budget and the significant reduction that we've had to make or proposing to make this year. Does that reflect the current budget?
So, I mean, this reflects the position just a couple of weeks after the budget was set.
So it's the current budget in light of it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously what's really critical is getting sight of that first data early in 24-25.
Well, I was going to come into that, but my first question is, in light of what the proposed changes in that budget, even though it's probably always going to be a high residual risk, do you think in light of that we're in a better position to manage the risk previously were?
No, I think there are really significant risks.
I know, I understand. I didn't maybe. It's clearly always going to be a risk. I would just say, are we better placed because of the decisions in your view, or not, as the case may be? Budget.
So
it's appropriate for you to answer, please.
I mean, some of those decisions were clearly political, and it's not my place to comment on whether it's better to spend money on sort of one.
No, not about
program or another. I know that's not where you're going. Yeah. You know, so what this is setting out is, you know, the risk to delivery against 24-25. You know, the changes that were made late in the budget process, you know, included some additional allowances that will help to mitigate some of those risks. You know, I'm worried that some of the early data we have shows that, you know, we will face another exceptionally challenging year.
No, I understand that. my follow-up question to that was, in light of, we need to deliver those proposed changes to the budget, because if we don't hit them, risks will be higher than otherwise. And will we get, I'm struggling to remember, will we get a 6-month update on where we are and the progress on achieving those budget changes?
So what you will get in July is a report that will set out the Q1 forecast for 24-25. It will also set out the results and accounts for 23-24, and it will update our forecast going forward to future years.
Right. Forgive me, so it's really probably Q2. At the end of Q2, we'll have a clearer idea of where we are and on the proposed budget and achieving it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee are looking at this, and there's a meeting scheduled for Tuesday of next week, and there are some worrying indications already. So that will be the first, July will be the first sort of full formal update to Cabinet in public, but it's not that we're sort of waiting for that. There's plenty of work going on to try and track and deal with those issues prior to that. But I am worried. I mean, just significant risks.
Okay, and I have one question, sorry, on item 11, strategic. Report suggests that recent reports that we may not get interest rate cuts now until later in the year. And I just, I recall discussions that the belief was that we get interest rates cut sooner than later than the final quarter of this year. If we don't get the interest rate cuts in the next 2-3 months, will that cause any significant changes to the risk assessment?
No, we're very careful. We expect, and I saw something from Capital Economics today actually about, they thought that the likelihood of a rate cut was coming, possibly as soon as June. We never built rate cuts into forecasts. So we were aware that the economic consensus was that there were going to be cuts probably in the second half of 2024-25. We normally build those into our forecasts in order to provide us with a degree of comfort about that.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
But it would be helpful.
In the notes, I think housing is going to produce a risk register for July. Just for information on a comment. Paul, are you the overall director for housing?
Yeah, so
fine.
Correct, Councillor.
Therefore, really just a plea really, because obviously at the moment we don't know who lives in our council stock. TA is worrying in terms of the figures. RMS is a perennial, hardy perennial, and there are unknown unknowns. Could I just ask as a plea in an open forum that you closely look at that risk register, and when it comes in July, it is accurate, on point, and the issues are there, because housing is an area of concern. Tonight, what we saw would raise a bigger one. The level of the standard of in July at the moment. Great. I just wanted to put it on the record, Chair.
Sorry, can you come in?
Yeah, of course, I'll look at that. Of course, I'll check through it. Of course, I'll take ownership of it. It's important that we address all of the issues that we've discussed this evening, and many others indeed, and reflect, I think, on the journey that housing team and that housing service has been on. It's got a lot of work to do, but it's made many great strides over recent months and years. And so July will come with a comprehensive assessment of where we're at.
I just say, I was the lead member for housing in 2017-18. I took a rental. We did have a tenancy audit programme.
Okay.
And I would ask you to look and review the recording of what was said tonight to check it for accuracy. And I'm being polite in my comment.
I'll do that, Councillor. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Councillor Higgins, please.
Thanks, Chair. The questions about the finance, the level of the finance risk on the risk register has reminded me that since we last met, budget scrutiny recommended and Cabinet formally agreed, if Audit Committee wanted to, we could get regular progress reports on savings deliveries. And we haven't discussed it as a committee since that recommendation was made. And that might, if we were to receive those reports, if we agreed that we wanted them, then that might help us get a greater level of assurance over our financial risk. I don't know whether it's for this agenda item, but we should definitely discuss it because budget scrutiny recommended it and cabinet agreed that if we wanted it, we can have it.
Conrad, did you have any comment on that?
No,
I think it's a decision for us to make as a.
I'm just asking, he's aware of it and if he has any comments to add, because yes, we should be, the savings target ultimately impacts on the budget delivery.
Do we want to add that to the forward plan? Is that what you want?
In fact, actually, can we put it as a regular agenda item on future meetings, because each quarterly at least.
Can we have it as an appendix to pack?
Pardon?
We can have it.
Is it helpful if I read out what has been offered to us? Because I've got it here.
Fine.
So the recommendation was introduce and implement governance arrangements to formally manage savings and growth delivery independent of basic budget monitoring at a corporate level, and for this programme to report to the independent chair of audit committee on a quarterly basis. And then what the cabinet has said is essentially if the independently chaired audit committee wish to receive progress reports, then that will be facilitated. So the scrutiny recommended that you as chair receive it, but cabinet has offered it to the whole committee.
I would share it with it's not confidential information.
So quarterly updates.
Yeah, that's fine. How often are you receiving the savings target information?
So at a management level, we'll have that monthly. We report it formally, quarterly to cabinet and other bodies that need it. So my suggestion would be a very clear sense of what the committee wants. Everyone's okay. Perhaps discussion with you, Chair. I'll agree the exact process and timing and all those sort of operational points.
Yes, if you would, Conrad, quarterly, so it follows the council's timetable is fine with myself. Councillor Chad.
Just a quick addition to what Councillor Paul has said. Could we also have in the housing risk register the risk of non-compliance with regulatory inspections? Because I think, again, that I don't know if we get fined if we don't do inspections on time and things like that. That would help, and I think it would help shape some of the stuff around the tenancy audit.
Ombudsman.
Well, not just ombudsman, but because it's noted that complaints are now being dealt with in a slightly different way. But the new regulatory inspection regime, what that would cost us if we got it wrong.
Of course, we can add that to the risk register. So I was just conferring with Conrad. I'm catching up to speed on a number of issues. Of course, we can add that to the risk register, and of course, we can report back on the compliance issues, which are regularly reported through the housing management structure. So on all of the aspects of compliance around fire safety, asbestos, gas, and all the other important kind of components, we can report on those things.
You said everything's reported via this housing management structure. Did you see the figures on the tenancy audit then?
Yes, I saw those in the paper.
And were you told they were accurate?
Oh, Councillor, I took the paper as read, and I asked a few questions. I mean, I'm not sure we've got time to open up the debates
I think
at that particular paper. But actually, I'm quite happy, councillors, to take it offline if you'd like a following conversation. I'm quite happy to do that informally.
There's an issue about the production of data through the organisation. Go to the director, you trust it, sign it off. We come here and we stick it in the bin.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nick, any further comments on the report that you feel?
For me.
Okay.
I would just note it.
So the committee is asked to note the report by members present in the room by show of hands. Is the report noted? Thank you. Item 9, quarterly internal audit update. 24. This is a report and I'd like to allocate 30 minutes for its consideration. I invite Officer Nicole Mativier to give a brief introduction to report and then I will invite questions.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair said, I'd like to take the report as read. It summarises briefly what the work that's been done since the previous audit committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions that members have.
Councillor Paul?
Yeah, what's going on with cyber?
We have Bloom.
Can we have straight answers, comply? We've been here before. for a year we've been fucked off. So in your answers, be honest and correct, because I just haven't got time.
Glyn, can you come in, please? I did, you mentioned earlier that you were attending in place of Amit Shankar. Conrad asked me if I wanted any further officers to attend, and I did ask for Amit to attend. He was unable. Glyn has come in his place because, as you'll see in Appendix B, there is a substantial number of cybersecurity actions that haven't been implemented. So, Glyn, this is really what we want to understand, what is happening here, why they haven't been implemented, and what is going to be the actions going forward. So, you can speak to the committee, please.
Sure. If I could just start with, this is all about risk mitigation, and the four key risks here are highlighted in agenda item 8 a moment or two ago. Those risks, pleasantly, a couple of them are improving, getting better positions on risk 1 and risk 3. Risk 2 has flatlined a little, and risk 4 potentially gone a little bit worse due to some decisions that have been taken. But the cyber position of the council, really, I suppose, I like to think of it in three ways. So the first is we like to do our very best to reduce the probability of a cyber incident. And there's lots of things we can do. And Conrad was perfectly spot on when he said, you've never finished that work. You can always spend a little bit more on that. But that first position is, let's reduce the probability or the likelihood of a cyber incident. The second lens of the three here is we talk about the blast radius, if you like, of a cyber incident, and how far and widespread that would impact a council. And the third lens will be, how quickly could we recover from a cyber incident? We've made some good progress on the first and the third of those lenses with some of the security changes we've put in place over the last 6 months. I'm really quite pleased about them. I'll talk about them, but not in a public forum. The second one, the kind of the blast radius element, we haven't made any progress on that. That will now wait for for Newham Council's progress to cloud computing, where the segmentation of the services and the servers will take place as your managed service provider migrates to the cloud. Are there any specific questions I can answer rather than just that kind of generic feel for how things are going?
Councillor Chadder, please.
Sorry, you kind of referred to it on risk 4. You said that some inappropriate or some wrong decisions had been made. Is that around procurement? Did we buy the wrong stuff?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that question.
Item 4, technology. Yeah,
yes.
You mentioned in your opening remarks that somebody made some wrong or inappropriate decisions. Am I to read from that and from the description in the document that somebody bought the wrong package? I'm being very crude and very simplistic.
No, don't read that into that.
So what was the wrong decision that was made?
So this is my personal opinion now, and it's just around the progress that Newham are on to complete some of their modernisation and their stabilisation work. Some of that is probably taking longer than is necessary.
Sorry, can I just interject? So you're saying taking longer than necessary. Why is that then?
It's about the decisions that have been taken on how that happens. So I have you can imagine looking after one source. I have a very live comparison to compare to Havering, and so the same situation occurs with Havering. The decisions have been taken slightly different at Havering, and we're able to accelerate some of the progress to take us into a safer position. Whilst Newham have elected to choose a slightly different route, but it will take a little bit longer.
Okay, sorry.
Point of clarification, you keep referring to, is it
Havering.
Oh, Havering, sorry.
Forgive me, Havering.
Okay, just to note, we're going to need to go beyond 9 o'clock. So
We're standing orders, Chair.
I was to it.
Okay, so that's agreed.
That's 30 minutes.
All right, so Councillor Chadder, you finished.
I don't understand the answer, frankly. So the comment was made that somebody had made a wrong decision somewhere. Now we're saying that isn't the comment. I'm just unclear. You've said number 4 has got worse because of an inappropriate decision. And this then speaks to a governance issue about where was the inappropriate decision taken and where were the checks and balances to make sure we didn't make the wrong decision. So that's why I'm probing it.
I'm not sure those were my words, but number 4, the risk of number 4 has increased. I think it's because of some decisions taken that will just mean that the mitigating factors that would address that risk are going to take a little bit longer to implement in Newham. Is that clear, Councillor?
I'm afraid not, but I'll come back to you in writing about it.
Okay, Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, what I'm essentially hearing is like essentially that the service knows what needs to be done and decisions are being taken above it to not sufficiently resource it. And so to some extent, it kind of feels pointless to discuss it with the service in depth because they know what needs to be done. They've got the action log. It's not happening because it's not being resourced. I think we're not going to solve that problem in this conversation. I think that we have to raise the alarm about this to full council. I said this earlier, and in hindsight, actually, I'm not sure that it just being a line in the audit report is enough. I don't know whether there is a constitutional provision for audit to bring concerns reports, specific reports to a full council meeting where it can actually be discussed. Because if it's just in the audit report to annual council, it won't get time to be discussed. And I think full council is probably the only body that can put political pressure behind moving quicker on this. Otherwise we're just talking about it for no reason when the resourcing isn't there.
Sorry, I just want some clarification. Glyn, are you saying this is a resourcing issue? Because I just want to, I didn't quite hear that in your comments.
No, it's more
okay,
of
I misunderstood what you were saying then, because you were saying that decisions being taken differently between here and Havering that has allowed Havering to move more quickly. That sounds like resourcing.
I suppose it's how we're using resources, councillor. But it is my service in one source, the IT service I run, work on a commissioning basis, if you like. So the two councils ask me to deliver and execute things, and we do. Havering have asked me to do a certain path, and we're on track with that. Newham had taken a slightly different path. That may be done to a different level of quality. That might be a counter argument. Might be done better at some point, but it will be done a little bit in a longer time frame.
Glyn, are you saying that there's 2 different target operating models, for one for Newham and one for Havering? So how you're managing each of those services, the outcomes are different?
That's correct, Chair. I think everybody present will know that one source IT is now got a finite life, and we are working on a programme to separate it and return IT to the 2 councils.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
All right, I'm going to change my question. So what is the question Newham should be asking you to deliver a service that we get the gaps? What is it we're not asking you, and what is it we should be asking you? Because what is the limiting factor? What's stopping you? I don't, for what you said, right? I don't understand what your limiting factor is. Please tell me in no more than 5 bullet points, what is the limiting factor and what is the correct question which should be asked to you? Because we've been here for over a year and I'm still none the wiser. 5 bullet points, please. What is the question?
Thanks, councillor. The risks are the same for both Havering and Newham. Havering have commissioned my team to move them from a position we might refer to as a technical debt position, a position where we've got problems, to get us to the next generation position. What Newham are doing is they're going to bring a partner in to do that work instead of one source colleagues who work for me doing that work. Bringing that partner in will take more time and potentially an extra 9 to 12 months.
Hold on, Councillor Paul. Let Glyn, please.
No, so Please.
Glyn, please continue. Just allow the officer to speak, please.
No, that was a good point for me to stop, Chair.
If you just repeat back, because
Sure.
even
So
the
my
clerk needs to hear. Can you repeat back what you were saying, please?
Of course, yeah. My team will be making some changes for Havering and for their IT infrastructure and technology stack over the next 9 to 12 months that will put them in a good position. At Newham, colleagues at Newham will be going through a procurement exercise, quite a heavyweight one, to bring in a managed service partner to do this work. So you'll be starting it maybe a year after Havering have started it. Indeed, Havering should have finished before you start, hopefully.
Okay, Conrad, can you just come in, please?
That is not my area of technical expertise, of course, but just to make it completely clear, I don't think anyone has said that Newham's approach is wrong and Havering's is right. Havering have taken an approach that will enable them to move from the existing technology platform to Cloud One faster, and will run that in-house. Newham's approach is to bring in a partner who will then help manage that service. That is necessarily a longer approach, because you need to procure the partner and so on and so forth, as a different way of managing the end state. So it's not that one approach is better or worse than the other. It's that Newham's approach takes longer because it's getting to a slightly different end state. I think that's a fair summary of what's been said. Just I'm conscious that Glyn's online and not really can hear the word.
Councillor Higgs.
That's fine. It's a request to you, Chair. I think it would be helpful for us if we could request the advice that Glimmer's team gave to Newham. And secondly, the report that was presented, which suggested an alternative, and that provided the basis for the cabinet, I presume, to make their decision. Yeah. And then we can have a look at that and audit to see whether we might, as you've explained there, Conrad, that I fully appreciate that. It may well be we come to the conclusion this is the right thing to do, but in absence of seeing that information, I don't think we're in a position to make judgment. So the advice from Glyn into Newham, and then also presumably there was a paper given to the cabinet with an alternative suggestion. Drafted by who, I don't know. We'll see that. Can we have copies of both of those, and then we can have a look at that, and then we can do it might be we're more than satisfied, but it may be that they throw up some concerns to us around risk.
And you've got everything.
Yeah, I've got those two.
Okay, Councillor Higgins.
My point's actually is a very good suggestion from Councillor Pinton. On the report where this decision was made, what I want to know is whether the people making that decision were aware of the impact on the timeline of the recommendations because an audit report has come, recommendations have been agreed that have a timeline, and we're now being told that a decision has been taken that has delayed delivery of those agreed recommendations. But were the people who made this decision aware of the impact on agreed audit actions when that decision was made? So I want to know if that's in the report, essentially.
Conrad, please.
So just, sort of factual point then. So Cabinet 5th of March has got the relevant report. Section 6 of that report has got a commentary on the alternatives that were considered and pros and cons to that. Obviously, there will be detail sitting behind that Cabinet report, as is always the case. But, just for the avoidance of doubt, the decision was taken at Cabinet, and the report set out that there were alternatives.
Specifically, I'm asking if this situation that we keep looking at in audit, whether this was raised to their attention in Cabinet when they were making this decision, that there is this set of audit recommendations that go back to 2021 that are going to be pushed even further by this decision.
I think we need to.
Yeah.
I don't think Conrad's going to be able to, but we'll look at the report.
I'm just clarifying what my question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any further questions?
Push, I think. Push, Dean.
Councillor Paul, did you have a comment?
No, it seems that the decision to go out of one source has slowed us down, right? So Councillor Benton's suggestion is where's the paperwork, the impact assessment of all the risks, but also we must recognise that decision has left the organisation exposed, right? So irrespective of what decision was taken, we are now exposed. is there a fix? Is there a plan B to get us up and ready? Because if we were hacked or cyber hacked, we can't say, yeah, we're waiting for the external partner to fix our gaps. I just want some assurance that we are being agile in amending the plan we've agreed at some point.
Could you respond, please?
I'll have a go. So if a cyber incident were to occur right now, your team to fix that are your OneSource colleagues, supported by a specialist third-party security agency called Stripe, and we would also have the National Cybersecurity Centre in our corner working with us. So we would do our very best to do that. If the priority of the council was just to reduce its cyber risk, maybe different decisions would have been taken. But I think it has to be that's one of the many decisions, one of the many factors I think that were in that cabinet paper. And I think there were some aspirations for bringing in a partner to do much more above and beyond what me and my colleagues currently do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Sorry, forgive me. Glyn, are you a contractor or are you an employee of OneSource or Newham Council?
So I am a contractor, and I lead OneSource. Yes,
thank you, Glyn. Chair, I think it's really unfair to put a contractor in this position. And I would just reiterate that if we could pass on to Mr. Shanker, that it is important that he is accountable. This isn't fair on Glyn.
Yeah.
We will ask the response to come from, in conjunction with yourself, with Mr. Shanker, so that. Okay, any other further questions? Or did you have any comments to feed through to the committee that you need?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The only thing I thought of when looking at page 101 of appendix A of the draft order plan, and it's
Yeah, I think you've really wonderfully highlighted that housing will become a greater focus in all its forms, this committee going forward. And can we ensure that the actual directors appear in front of it? Because a particular person never appeared here.
We will make sure that timing they're aware in advance that yes. Yes, councillor.
Yeah, thank you for the clerk for raising this. I think I'm somewhat surprised not see something about workplace culture on the original draft audit plan. We've talked about like compliance with training before, and I swear I remember seeing in the action log or something that would be part of an upcoming report to audit, but it's not reflected in this plan. I'm just wondering if I'm missing.
One of the that the internal audit are going to be doing.
Oh, so it's not necessarily all the reports that come to okay, understood. I guess I don't know whether it's appropriate for, I'm still, relatively new to audit. I don't know whether it's appropriate for internal audit to look at workplace culture, but we still hear about high turnover. There was Councillor Chadder's questions about the Tell Jane hotline. To me, it seems like something that it's a strategic risk to the workplace if it's a difficult place to work for. And as a member of audit, I'm interested in that. I wonder about how to advance that through internal.
Some of that will come under the peer review work. There's a definite section about culture in there, so
okay,
that's where it will follow through.
Should the peer review be on this provisional draft audit plan?
We're looking at that in a separate way, not as internal audit, but what the output from that, what that means for the council. So it wouldn't be as an internal audit.
Thank you, Chair.
Or the committee is asked to note the report present in the room there. I see by a show of hands is the report noted. Item 10, quarter progress report. Any questions on the report, and I'll hand over to Nick to.
Okay, yeah, just to quickly introduce it. I'd like to say, obviously, final figures for this financial year. Last year was sort of breaking for the team, and we've beaten last year's stats in relation to the. And so kind of did on the second consecutive year. On from that, I'd also just point out that we've also listed some of the work that we're going to be doing in the future in relation to temporary accommodation, particularly in terms of council tax. Haven't had some of the previous here. Both of those will be added to this quarterly report the next time we meet to show that where our progress is with those. Say that in relation to council tax, the officer that started has already made with identifying savings. On from that, which is not listed in the report, but I think it's worth noting. Previously, I've reported that our Count Fraud apprentice had not only been nominated for a Heart Award, but also a Count Fraud award. She was shortlisted for both, but equally, I've found out this week that she's been shortlisted for a third external work directly by SEPFA. So I just wanted to sort of say that from a celebratory point from our team. And after that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Pauline, can you please note in the minutes that success for the counter fraud team in particular, if you give Pauline the name.
I'll get the details from you afterwards. Right.
Councillor Chaddock, please.
I welcome the focus on temporary accommodation. Can I just ask, who's going to, is this again when you've had a tip-off, or are you going to be working with tenancy liaison to investigations?
More detail will be provided. At the moment, it's going to be intelligence led, so we're looking at data matching other things. So there isn't the detail yet because it's starting, but it'll be provided as well.
Thank you. Councillor Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you. On section 1.8, you mentioned 20 cases. I wonder going forward, can you produce, making an assurance, a 360 view of who those 20 cases are? In my head, what I'm talking about, I want to know what teams have those directorates been having appalling risk registers. You know, I'm thinking where we've had really bad audit reports, is it the same areas? We've got staff who are, let's say, not doing the right thing. So I know when you read backwards, can you just add some context of where, what, where, how? Because I think there's a link in the organisation where those cases are. It's a hunch and hypothesis I've got. I'd like you to prove the data, please.
Point taken. We'll look to see how we can provide more information. Obviously, within some areas will be confidential, but we'll see what we can provide to give further detail in future.
Okay, Councillor Higgins. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Nick, to you and your whole team for this work. It seemed quite impressive, and the awards are certainly very impressive. I just wanted to reiterate my earlier request, but from your perspective this time, instead of from housing's perspective of working between Canford and the housing tenancy visit programme. If we can catch them if we can catch fraud while we're doing the tenancy visits for student council tax fraud, then that saves you then having to do your own investigation as well. So I just want to make sure that those two teams are working together to make sure that anything that will help you do your work when these visits are happening is taking place.
Okay. Councillor Penton.
Just again, I'd like to add my congratulations work for the team and the recognition that you're getting outside of Newham. Just on in 1.4 on the tables there, we got from 2018-19 to the last financial year. On the first two items, we see relatively significant increase, particularly the first one. Is that a combination? Is that you think you're doing your job better? Is it because there's more that's happening, or is it a combination of both? Or don't you know?
I would say that we as a team are kind of doing a better job than was being done previously, realistically. we can't quantify how much fraud is out there. We can only guess at some of that. So I wouldn't necessarily link it to an increase. It's more that the current fraud team are doing a good job.
Right. That's it.
Okay, and just one probably point there, obviously during the 2 years prior to the last two.
Of course, sorry, the pandemic, COVID, you couldn't do the inspection.
That had a slight impact on those years as well.
No, that's a point well made, actually, very, very well made. Although, you know, yeah, so that would, although 2018, 2019 was before COVID, so a jump from 4 to 27.
2019 was before I started.
Okay.
2020 was first coming in. The second 2 years are during COVID, and the next is having a better team.
Okay, that's useful for us to know. Just gives a bit of info. Thank you.
Nick, just on the housing successions, it says you're taking on further responsibilities. Why is that?
Mainly having had discussions with the assistant director that it was the work that we were currently doing, it would be more efficient for us to do some of the front end work to that than the system that was currently in place.
And is that effective from this financial year?
It will be. I'm in the process of trying to get it finalised.
Can I just ask a question? We've got 29 housing liaison officers who should be liaising with our housing stock and doing 4,600 checks a year. Surely they should be your eyes and ears, those housing agencies. If not, why not? Because it seems you're not using the resources of 29 appropriately. Why?
I think from our point of view, obviously, when the tenancy audit programme is in place and more visits have been done, we'll naturally get more referrals to us. So it will create probably more work because history would say that, yeah, the more visits that are done, the more referrals that are going to be made.
Are they trained to give you referrals? Do you train them?
We've provided fraud awareness training and fraud training since I've been here, and I'm more than happy to do so if there are any staff that need it.
Any further questions? Any further comments in the report? Okay, the committee is asked to note the report. To members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands is the report noted? Thank you. Item 11, year ahead forward plan. A member has requested the LGA peer review is brought to the audit committee. I support that progress on the action plan is considered by the committee. Is the committee happy that we invite officers to report back on the action plan progress at a future meeting, which would be either July or October? Conrad?
Yeah, no problem doing that. We also have a request from scrutiny for that. It would be really helpful if perhaps there could be a discussion between audit and scrutiny as to actually which committee is going to play which role, so that officers are clear.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that's in play. Yeah.
Well, I've got two requests, so from two different committees.
I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it going to both committees. We're looking at it from different perspectives. There's a staff side to it and an organisation side, which is more of our duty, and there's the political side of it and the sort of administration side of it that's more scrutiny's focus. So I don't think it's inherently wrong for it to come to both committees.
I'll catch up with the chair of scrutiny.
I was going to say, maybe the chairs could speak.
Double hat.
We were meant to receive a year-end report on the working of the committee for endorsement at the annual council on the 23rd of May. I'll be working with officers on this report and will communicate it by the committee as we've not scheduled to meet again before the annual council meeting. Are there any questions on changes to the forward plan for the next municipal year? Has the training that's been received so far been sufficient, or is there any specific training that any members would like?
Chair, I just want to reflect on the majority Labour Group's discussion, which recently was around. So we will come back to the Chief Executive about training issues as we see them. And I don't know if that then would be appropriate to be passed on to you as well. So.
Okay. As mentioned earlier, we'll be looking to put a special session for housing. As you're all aware, there's many different issues that have been raised within the housing service.
Several, Chair.
Sorry?
Would there be several on housing? And I think the issue is quite.
I think we will start, I think we need to just start with one and
Okay.
this isn't the housing subject or something, so that's not the purpose. There are considerable governance and other issues, control issues that we need to consider. So.
But just I think proposing one specific meeting to look at the audit aspect implications of housing or all elements of housing across.
Yeah, that are in the public domain that you're all aware of that.
Yes.
That we should be considering as well, because there are control and governance issues that have been raised. So.
I think it's a very good idea and then we can decide at the end of that what recommendation we make or whether we need to do more with. So we don't need to prejudge it now.
No, I think one meeting to understand what the issues are and then can go from there. I wouldn't say several. Yes.
If we look at the strategic housing delivery programme, I think the figure I got in my head is about 329 million, let's call it 400 million quid at risk, let's say, in terms of borrowing requirement. There are other issues in the housing. When we find issues, we have an organisation which is very bad at following up and doing the right thing. What additional levers do we have? Because okay, finding the issues, I think we have found quite a lot of issues in this particular calendar year. But what do we do to ensure that this organisation complies? Because at the moment, compliance is one of our issues. What is it? What are our additional powers? What do we do? Is there something we haven't deployed as an audit committee to make the organisation comply with its own rules?
I don't think we have. I think that is ultimately senior management team have to be setting the standard for officers to follow and comply and do their roles appropriately. And also the chief exec as the most senior officer in the council. And also members need to say at council meetings, we're expecting everyone to comply with the rules and procedures within the council. That is your duty as an officer and a member.
Yeah, to that end, we will be having the report on training, mandatory training status in July 24. Can we please invite the chief executive to that meeting? Because I think it's in the timed reports update on performance appraisals, report and mandatory training status, which is what I referred to earlier. Can we please invite the chief executive to that meeting?
Yes, we can do. We previously invited Colin, so yes, we can invite Abby to.
Thank you.
As the most senior officer to field questions on that.
I'll make a note to let her PA them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so. Yeah, so we're just adding on the housing and we'll see about the corporate peer review. Okay, so to members present in the room, may I see by a show of hands is the report noted? Thank you. Okay, item 12, date of next meeting. The date of the next meeting has been provisionally scheduled for the 19th of June 2024, which will be on finance. That concludes tonight's business. Before we end the meeting.
Can I ask before, we don't need officers to stay for this, but can we have a discussion among members just about how we organise business? And I'll go into more of it, but I just don't think it's appropriate to do it while officers are here. It shouldn't take long.
Okay. If other members don't mind waiting 5 minutes.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Long.
Thank you.
Hold on. Yes.
Sorry to keep everyone.
That's okay.
Yeah, we used to get those dates on. You know.
Sorry.
I just had to the last. Yes, sorry. Okay. That concludes tonight's business. Before we end the meeting, I'd like to wish good night to everyone and thank you who have been watching on YouTube. I now declare the meeting closed and ask the clerk to stop the YouTube broadcast and to confirm to the when the live stream